Iravan, the one who loved for a single night. They say the Mahabharata is a war story, but if you listen carefully, really carefully, it's actually a story about what people are willing to do for love, for duty, for belonging. And there is one soul in that great ocean of a story who has nearly been forgotten. A young man whose name was Iravan, who came to the battlefield not for glory, not for gold, not even for victory, but because he wanted, just once, to belong. This is his story. To understand Iravan, you must first understand loneliness. Iravan was the son of Arjuna, the great archer, the third Pandava, the beloved of Krishna. That much sounds like an inheritance of gold. But the world is rarely so simple. Arjuna had once travelled to the heavens and the netherworlds on a long journey of penance and discovery. During that wandering, he met Ulupi, a Naga princess, daughter of the Serpent King, who fell in love with him with the quiet certainty of deep water. They were together for a brief season, and from that love, Iravan was born. But Arjuna moved on, as warriors often do. He had other duties, other kingdoms, other wives. And Iravan grew up in the underwater palace of his mother's people, the Nagas, without his father's hand on his shoulder, without his father's name spoken proudly over him in a court. He knew who he was by blood. But knowing your name and being claimed are two very different things. The years passed. Iravan grew into a young man of rare courage and beauty. He had his father's eyes and his mother's stillness. He had learned the martial arts of both worlds, the archery of the Kshatriyas and the serpent magic of the Nagas. He was, in truth, extraordinary. But extraordinary and invisible are not opposites. Sometimes they live right next to each other. When the Pandavas declared war against the Kauravas on the great battlefield of Kurukshetra, the call went out across the three worlds. Warriors gathered from every direction. Kings, princes, celestial beings, and those who simply knew that this battle would decide the shape of the age to come. It was the kind of moment that pulls certain souls like a tide pulls the shore. Iravan felt that pull. He left the underwater kingdom. He crossed the rivers, the mountains, and the dusty plains, and he arrived at the Pandava camp to offer himself, his bow, his serpent weapons, his young life to his father's cause. Arjuna received him. There was recognition, perhaps even pride, and Iravan joined the army. But here is where the story takes a turn that only a deeply honest tradition would tell. Before the war could begin, the greatest strategists, including Krishna himself, calculated what the battle would demand. The scale of what was coming was enormous, and it became clear that for victory to be complete, a great sacrifice was needed. A human offering to goddess Kali to sanctify the soil and steady the dharmic forces would have to be made before the armies clashed. The sacrifice required something almost impossible to ask. A warrior willing to die before the war even began, not in the heat of battle, not with a sword in hand and adrenaline in the blood, but quietly, deliberately, and as an offering. Who would agree to such a thing? The silence that followed that question was the kind that makes a fire seem very small. Then Iravan stepped forward. He said he would give his life. He would be the sacrifice. He asked for nothing in return. No kingdom, no throne, no place in the chronicles of heroes, only one thing. He had never been married. He had never had a family of his own. He would die young, and he would die before the war even began. Could he, just this once, be given a night of belonging, a night of being a husband, a night of being someone's, of not being alone? It was the most human request imaginable. And here the story holds its breath, because who would marry a man who was to die the very next morning? No woman would agree. No king would give his daughter to a man with no tomorrow. And so the gods looked at each other, and it was Krishna, the one who always found the way, who answered. Krishna took the form of Mohini, the most beautiful woman in all the worlds. He himself became the bride. They were married that evening as the sun set over Kurukshetra. And in the morning, when Iravan walked willingly to his end, it was Mohini, it was Krishna, who wept for him, who mourned him with all the grief of a widow, who let the world know that this young man had not died unknown. He had been loved, he had been seen. Iravan died before the first arrow flew. He gave his life so that Dharma could have a foothold, and then the war began. In many tellings, his story ends here, a footnote, a name in a long list. But the people of Tamil Nadu remember him differently. In the Koothandava tradition, and especially in the town of Kuvagam, Iravan is not a footnote. He is the center. Every year, in one of the most extraordinary rituals in the world, transgender women and hijras from across India gather to marry Iravan, as he is known in the Tamil tradition. They celebrate the wedding with all its joy and beauty. They dress as brides, they sing, and the next morning they break their bangles and mourn him. They have kept his story alive for centuries, not because they were told to, but because they recognized something in him that spoke to their own lives, the longing to belong, to be loved, to be seen in a world that does not always make space for you. They gave him the mention that history forgot to write. Iravan's story happened thousands of years ago on a battlefield that no longer exists. And yet, even today, somewhere a person is doing the quiet, unseen work that holds something together. Somewhere, someone is too afraid to ask for the one thing they truly need. Somewhere, a person is grieving a love they were told was too small to count. Iravan lived all three of those truths. And so, in ways we perhaps have not yet named, have we. So let us sit with his story a little longer, not as listeners now, but as people looking for a mirror. 1. You do not need to be at the center to matter. Iravan did not win the war. He is not in the most famous passages of the Mahabharata. He did not fire the arrow that broke Karna or speak the wisdom that became the Gita. By every conventional measure, he was a small character in an enormous story. And yet, the earth of Kurukshetra was made ready because of him. The sacrifice he made quietly, without fanfare, was the foundation on which everything else stood. How often do we measure our worth by whether we are at the center, by whether we are noticed, credited, or remembered? Iravan's life asks us to consider, what if the most important thing you ever do is something no one else sees? What if your quiet contribution, the support you gave, the sacrifice you made, the space you held, was actually the thing that made everything else possible? For the child who feels overlooked, for the homemaker who wonders if their work is invisible, for the employee who does the unseen work that holds the team together, this is your story too. You do not have to be the hero of the headline. Sometimes the deepest heroism lives in the footnote. 2. The bravest thing you can ask for is belonging. Iravan was about to die. He could have asked for immortality. He could have asked for his name to be written in gold. He could have demanded that Arjuna publicly claim him as a son at last. He asked for a single night of not being alone. There is something both heartbreaking and deeply wise in that. Because beneath all our ambitions and achievements, this is what most of us are really searching for. The feeling of being known by someone, of mattering to another person, of having a witness to our existence. We live in a world that tells us to want power and recognition. And then we wonder why, even when we achieve those things, we still feel that quiet ache. Iravan knew what he truly needed, and he had the courage to ask for it simply. For the teenager who feels alone in a crowded school, for the adult who has achieved much but feels unseen, for the elder whose children have grown and whose world has grown quiet, the reminder is this: the longing to belong is not weakness. It's the most honest thing about us, and we are allowed to ask for it. 3. Love is not diminished by grief, it is completed by it. The image that stays with you from this story, the one that does not let go, is of Mohini weeping. Krishna, who had seen entire ages rise and fall. Krishna, who had held the cosmic plan in his palm. That same Krishna, in the form of a bride, weeping real tears for a young man who had died. What does that tell us? It tells us that grief is not the opposite of love. Grief is its completion. When we mourn someone, when we break our bangles, when we sit with the weight of loss, we're not failing. We're finishing the story with the dignity it deserves. And it tells us something even more tender. Being loved even briefly, even for a single night, is not less than being loved for a lifetime. The women of Kuvagam know this. They have carried this truth for centuries. A love that is real, even if it is short, leaves a mark that does not fade. For those who have lost someone, for those who have been loved, for those who have loved and been left, for those who wonder whether the love they gave or received was enough because it did not last, this is your answer. Love does not need forever to be real. It only needs to be true. Iravan walked into the dawn, knowing exactly what was coming. He did not run, he did not rage against it. He carried the memory of one night's belonging like a lamp in his hands, and he walked forward. That is not a small thing. That is perhaps the largest thing a human being can do. To live fully in the time we are given, to ask honestly for what we need, to offer what we have without waiting to be asked, and to trust that even a life that ends quietly can change the shape of the world. His name was Iravan. He was a son, a warrior, a husband for one night, and a sacrifice that history almost forgot. Here we are, still saying his name. This was The Legend of Iravan, a story by Samsara Sagas. While the story ends here, the journey continues within you.